It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Bo Pang from Griffith University in Australia, who's going to talk to us about social marketing in China, the challenges and opportunities. Over to you, Bo. Thanks so much.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. So it's great to be here, and I really want to take this opportunity to thank Professor Jeff French and all the board members to make this webinar possible. I think it's a very important topic to talk about social marketing in China. As Jeff just showed us, there's a big gray area across the Asian regions, and every time we go to any social marketing conferences, I don't think we're going to see a lot of Asian faces there anyway. So it's a very important topic, and as a very proud Chinese here today, I think it's a long overdue topic too. I think there are a lot of good stuff happening in China, a lot of good talented people working really hard, trying to make our life a little bit better, using social marketing as very powerful behavior change to make things happen, to push society forward, but it was not captured by the international community. So I would like to make a little bit like disclaimer before I start. Is actually because I've been working mainly outside China. So all these topics, all these examples I'm going to give you today is actually from my own observation. I've been a long time observer and admirer, actually, observing all these fantastic social marketing campaigns and initiatives and ideas happening in China. I wasn't involved with any of them. I'm just looking at them and evaluating them from my own interesting as a hobby. So I think we can all agree commenting is much easier than doing it. So I'm going to make some good comments and harsh comments, but I'm pretty sure we can all respect all the hard work they've been doing in China to make things happen too. So we all know a lot of things are out of our control. We can always design good ideas, implement good interventions, but how that come out, sometimes it's out of our hand. So to start with, I'd like to give you guys a little bit background knowledge about China. I think the real China is a little bit, I would say, slightly different from you are hearing in the media. So a lot of myths actually surrounding what China is, what China looks like, and what happened to China in the last 40 years. For what I see here is just because we grow so fast as a country, all the things we experienced was actually compressed into a very short amount of time. It's just 40 years. If you think about all these industrializations and all this country development compared to other countries like UK or US, probably they spend 100 years and 200 years to go through all these processes. But in China, we compress everything into 40 years. This is a very, I would say, depressing, but also impressive social experiment that we are conducting here. But a country is developing, which is always a good thing, but how all this development will be reflected on individuals, I mean, that's going to be a very, very challenging topics. That's why we're seeing so many unique problems in China that are, I would say, multifaceted, multi-level, and of course, it's weak as always. So I'm going to use the very traditional marketing tool here, the past analysis, to actually analyze China, to give you a little bit background of what China is. But of course, it's a dynamic. China is an evolving entity. And I'm trying to give just a snapshot of what we are here right now at this moment. Things are definitely changing. Things has changed a lot. So in terms of the political aspect, I think the biggest one is we can all agree China has a very strong government, was trying to push all these policies and regulations on people, and it's always effective. We have a very good, I would say, population who tend to listen to what the government is telling them. And you can tell from the COVID, I would say prevention, COVID handling. So we know what to do, and we always give the orders to so people will follow. And that's why how we effectively actually contain the spread of the virus within China. And of course, in terms of that, because of all these historical issues, we know how efficient the policy can be, and how the general public tend to trust the government in this sense. Even though they don't trust it, they will still follow order no matter what. That gives the government a lot of leverage to actually implement the behavior change programs in the long run too. And of course, if you're taking at the social marketing perspective, a lot of campaigns running like in the common sense by community groups, by NGOs, they will experience big hurdles in China just because of the logistic framework doesn't allow them to individually function in the community. So in order for them to function, they will have to work with what they call the local liaisons, or they have to set up a localized entity in order to function legally. So it's going to be a little bit challenging for foreigners or international organizations to actually have a play in the field in China. And in recent years, I think just because of all this big economic development, the government is also pushing very strongly pushing the national pride. This is what we call the Chinese dream. So it's actually a different version of I would say to make sure the people who are proud of their country, and this actually creating a lot of buzz in the community and change people's behavior in the sense that they start to think about, especially for young people, they think about what lifestyle they want to take and what kind of behavior they want to take in terms of the individualism versus collectivism, and how they want to respond to all these international changes and conflicts. So that's actually a very, very big aspect impacting people's everyday life. So in terms of economics, I think that's we can always say it's a strong growth in terms of economic GDP growth in China. It has already increased 50 times more since within these 40 years. Very, very strong GDP growth, which is actually, I will say, a double-edged sword. It's actually bring people both the benefits and barriers. So we can see it's a lot of people are getting richer. There's an increased number of middle classes people, and people are having better like purchasing powers. We're living a better life in terms of food, quality of life, living better, having good means of transportations, and we can also, using internet, all these kind of benefits brought by all this the economic growth. But also it gives us a lot of other things like obesity, all the stress in the work, internal competition. That's the thing we call in China very common now. It's called involution. So that's the term we're using to describe the internal competition just because of COVID, which crippled the economy growth. So things like, the cake is not growing bigger now. It's a small same size of cake, but people are getting more. That's why people have to fight each other. So the internal competition is getting worse and people are getting stressed, and that leads to more mental health issues, less, more stress in the work. And of course, we have this big one called the Made in China 2025 initiatives. It's a big one, government backing, trying to change people's perception about the cheap made in China perception, which is really talking about the high-tech driven economy, talking about telecommunications, space programs, chip making, all this stuff, and trying to change people's perception about that too. So next is social. I think social here is quite unique. In China, it's like we are still living in a very unique moment in life. Is very big conflicts between the traditional value of Chinese people versus all this introduced value, way of life. We still respect a lot. For example, harmony. We tend to avoid confrontations. We don't want to fight. We respect elderlies. We respect people with hierarchies, and we tend to follow orders, like I mentioned before, and we tend to be working hard. So that's a very unique culture in China, but that generates a lot of differences as well for generational gap. Is every single time people move to the next stage of their life, they change a lot. And the generation gap, for example, parents between kids, and that tend to be very, I would say, different in terms of values and way of living, and that's it is creating a lot of conflicts between them as well. And another one is actually the wealth gap. Is I think it's common in any other country now as well. It's like 20% of people getting 80%, holding 80% of the wealth in the country, and it's the very limited means to invest and people are getting stressed about their financial means. But if you think that way, this is really about becoming a first world problem, because 40 years ago, people are still struggling for food, living just above the poverty line. Now they just want to get to the next level, want more, and that causes a lot of stress in the society too. And of course, the last one, I'm pretty sure you all saw the news. In the news, the aging population. This is exactly what happened in Japan 30 years ago. Now it's happening in China. It experienced a big explosion of population growth, even though we have that single child policy. But after 20 years, 30 years, that policy actually is showing its power, and no more new children were born. Very, very little numbers, and the whole. If you check the draft, the figure of the population, it's gonna be like a cliff declining. So that's the social aspect. And last one is technological. And you can see there are a lot of people using internet, a lot of people using smartphones, and the Chinese government is heavily investing in renewable energies, electric vehicles, and they are really pushing hard for technology investment. That's why a lot of people are, when they are choosing their profession, they tend to be a little bit more aiming for the thing they think there's going to be a big potential in the future, which is advanced manufacturing, telecommunications, space programs, and that will show its power in the next 20 to 30 years. So this is basically how we look like in terms of what China is. I think it's really a very unique entity compared to any other country in the world. It's a different unique culture. It have the only problem as well, but only thing I can say is actually we are trying to push a better society, and there are a lot of people are trying to solve the problems step by step. If you look at this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, this is actually the assessment chart last year. So there are 17 goals across the 17. China actually did pretty well across most of them. It's either making significant progress, either achieved the goal already, and the only two things are actually declining. And one is a partnership for the goals. Maybe it's still asking for more international contribution to the international communities. Or another one is life online. But others are really just improving. So this is just my take on all the social issues based on my observation. I think little research has been done. I think a systematic review on all these publications will be more revealing than what I'm seeing here. But again, what I'm trying to give here is actually you can see how the old problems, because of the economic growth, disappeared overnight, or just fade away step by step. But there are new problems coming out all the way as well, and probably the new problem are bigger and more severe. So I think the biggest one you can see is population, right? So the public control used to be the biggest task for the government, and now everyone is the government and everyone, big companies and social media, everyone is trying to encourage people to have the third child. But it's going to be a very, very challenging job for them because people's norm has been set, people's expectation has been set, and it's going to be a lot of work, a lot of opportunities for social marketing practitioners to function here. For health, as any developing countries, the old health problem is always the communicable diseases like malaria, cholera, polio, rabies. And that one, all of this has disappeared because of the mass vaccination programs happening in the last 40 years. But now we got a new problem, a very common one in the first word, like obesity, drinking problems, smoking, and the mental health because of the stress, and suicide rate is going up as well. So look at the environmental too. So in the last, I would say from before 1980, there is no environmental problem. There's no environmental consciousness at all in the community. People are always talking about, okay, building factories, making progresses, getting better life. And they are even using all these metrics, thinking about cutting off all the trees on the ground will be a big progress so they can build factories. That's their only goal. But I think that's fair because there's conflicts of interest. At a certain point of the time, you just have to make sacrifices to make sure you are going forward. And now everyone is seeing all the big problem. You can see the fogs everywhere in the big cities, and people are complaining about the air pollution, about the environmental issues. And the government is actually pushing for all these big ones. If you know the cryptocurrency mining things is devouring a lot of electricity in China. And just in last month, people are, the government is actually shutting down all these factories, trying to reach the what they call the carbon neutrality by 2050. So social used to be a lot of big problems in terms of poverty. People cannot provide food on the table. Superstition, a big one as well in China. People, especially for old people, they get sick. They choose not to go to the hospital. They just want to go to the temple, and they seek for all these alternative therapies rather than just proper medical treatment. And literacy as well. A lot of people don't know how to read and write, and now all these things actually just disappeared. People don't suffer from all these issues anymore, but we got new ones. We're talking about the gender equality, right? The women are now paid equally compared to men. Domestic violence, we're talking about vulnerable groups like disabled people. They're getting more and more attention, so people tend to be more helping with them as well. And the last one is the workplace. Used to be people want to, again, work harder, let's do it. We just don't have enough skilled people. We don't have good efficiency. We have to improve the harder. Now it's getting to the other end of the extreme spectrum, I will say. It's the people are complaining about overwork. There is a culture, what we call the 996, which means it's you work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days per week. So that's a norm, that's a culture. Basically, every single company in China does that. And that creates a lot of trouble. That's why it's a social movement is happening right now in China. It's called laying flat, which means like young people, we just don't want to work that hard anymore. I choose to just lay in flight instead of going to work. So it's giving, it's like a non-conflicted way of saying, no, I don't want to try that hard anymore. So for all these social issues, there are actually a lot of social marketing initiatives trying to fix. I've been following all these fantastic examples here and there for years. This is actually how I will summarize all of them. So it's actually 12 traits, I will say, but they are coming in 6 pairs. And I organized actually 6 examples to just showcase what we have done in China in the last 40 years and how that evolved over time as well. And I will just feature each of them according to each of the traits I put in here. Okay, so the first one is cheap but rough. I think this is the most important trait we have in China. I think as a developing country, the cost effectiveness is always on the back of our mind. And every time we make a decision, we just try to be cheap, try to be achieving more with less money, less cost involved. So this is a very, very common scenario in China. If you have ever been to China, you will see this everywhere. And it's getting old a little bit, but that's the typical way of how the old-fashioned government public service announcement will go. They just paint the slogans on the wall. Okay, it's cheap. It costs basically nothing. It looks really rough, but it will stay there for a long time, and people will notice them and people will follow them. But over time, of course, people get desensitized, and over time, people got other mediums. People get, attention will be diluted by other things, and people start noticing them as well. This is really a historical mark of what we did social marketing in the old times. I will say from the 50s to 80s, and it's getting retired a lot. And people are starting to be a little bit nostalgic about that. And you can see on social media, people are taking pictures and collecting all these different slogans here in China. So this is the first traits. Second one is really talking about why we are doing this from the government perspective. So a lot of campaigns are actually targeting on grassroots, like the community, just the individuals in the community, but it's actually backed or funded by government and by large companies. So this is example of trying to fix the problem of people taking the break from the Great Wall. I think we all know that tourists does that a lot. People just go to the historical sites and take just a small part of the break or some stuff as a souvenir. And the historical site like Great Wall attract like billions of people every year. And this is actually a big issue because in the next 10 years, maybe we don't have a Great Wall anymore. So this is actually funded by the largest company in China called Tencent. What they're trying to do here is trying to create just a package, a product that the package looks exactly like the break of the Great Wall. And they pack it with all these informational sheets. They got it with some small promotional materials. And they got, I think, some food, some small treats there as well. And they're just giving people, they're trying to educated people don't do that. And I think they have a very, very smart of distribution system trying to attract people's attention. People can register on their website, and then they have some algorithm to decide who will get it. It creates a lot of buzz in the community. But if you look at that, it's actually not doable by small people because it requires a lot of money. The system has to be in place to make sure all these things happen. It has to be professionally designed, and it's a lot of resources involved into this. So whether it's work or not, we don't know, but it definitely is not. It's not going to be as scalable as we want to be. So this is the second one. Third one, I will say, is very, very innovative, but we don't do enough formative research and theorization. This is another example. This example is trying to fix a problem with poverty. So what they are doing here is they're asking all these children who live in rural area, who's living under the poverty line, the children aged from 8 to 12, to write poems. Okay, so, and when they finish the poems, they take the poems, they put into the computer, and they install this, I would say, looks like the afterpost or ATM machines. They install all these machines in the high traffic areas like subway stations and bus stations. And all these passengers passing by can actually purchase all the poems. Just $1. Just $1, you just use a credit card, scan it, and there's a small printer, as you can see, just prints out the poem written by the people, the children in the rural area. And of course, the money will go to them to fund their education, fund their everyday living. Great idea, innovative. But if you think about it very hard, what is the marketing value here? You cannot just rely on people's goodwill. So how could a 2-year-old child write a good poem that people are willing to pay for? It's just a small gimmick. People just trying to find a reason so people can give money, give donation to the poor people, right? There's no serious use. Apparently, they're just coming out with an idea. They have some access to this kind of technology, and they just make it happen. They just want to see whether it's working or not. Again, no evaluation. We don't know whether it's working or not. It's just a fancy idea, but doesn't have the whole picture in mind with the designer. So that's how I will say the third trait. And the fourth one, I think that's the one I like the most. It's really about the messaging here in China. So I think we have a very unique discourse system due to all this historical background we're having. Every time we're writing a message, it feels like we are giving an order. We're telling you what you need to do, and we are like a parents giving order to the children, just letting you know this is good for you, please do it. Or maybe sometimes we don't even use please. And we don't have that kind of emotional touch when we are trying to communicate this kind of messages. So sometimes we got really good messages. So I can translate what's written here. I'm sorry, it's Chinese, so I have to translate. So this is actually a small billboard in the construction site. And there's a lot of problem with the construction site in China because, you know, the construction workers are normally less educated males, and they tend not to follow the safety protocols, and they tend not to wear the safety helmet, and that's create a lot of trouble that kills them, and it creates troubles in the society. So this is what the billboard is saying. It says here, I'm going to translate literally word by word. It says here, dear co-workers, please care for your own safety, because if anything bad happens to you, which implying they will be killed, there will be another guy who will be able to sleep your wife, abuse your child, and spend your pension. So that's exactly what it says here. I think this is very powerful information. It communicates the benefits and the barriers and the consequences of not doing something, and it's written right into the target audience. Very, very powerful, but very, very, I would say, politically incorrect in this way. But again, this is how we do things. We want to make sure it's effective, and we were driven by cheap and effective method, and we just sometimes ignore all the other things. That's how I summarize the fourth trait we're having. So the fifth one, again, it is a very popular thing in China as well. It's all these big companies, they're trying to sponsor good cause event. That's what they call a good cause event. It's trying to gather talented people to come up with ideas to make the society a better place. And then they will be able to fund all these ideas. I think they're having these events like annually, or even funded by different companies. So having quite frequently. So is there actually very, very beautifully designed posters, I would say. But normally people just, this kind of events only attract all these artists. So they're giving beautifully designed, they're getting really good ideas. And all the judges will just judge based on how good the poster looks like. So the first one, as you can see, is trying to encourage people to save water. What it says here is, please don't let the last drop of water become our tears. That's the first post says. The second one is actually a reference to a very popular reality show in China. It's a reality show talking about how the father interacted with the children, and then it gives a slogan here on this poster saying the same thing, but trying to promote, trying to prevent illegal wildlife hunt. You can say that you kill the father of the animal, the kids will be left alone. The third one is talking about don't waste food, because the food was produced by the weight, the sweat of the farmers, trying to give you a little bit more moral sense of appreciate other people's work. So beautifully designed, but when the judges come in, they don't value how good, they just value how good, how beautiful these posters look like. They don't judge how you're going to execute the ideas, how you're going to evaluate the ideas, how you're going to make sure people change the behavior as intended. So there's no system there. They don't know what to do. That's why how I summarize the fifth trait of social marketing initiatives in China. Here's the last one. I think this one is very interesting too. It's because there's so many things that happened, but it's just a few got documented and it's very hard to find. This is actually a website plus an app. So it's basically two things all together. It's called Rice Donation. This website it's just a website, I would say very similar with Kickstarter and GoFundMe. It's a crowdfunding website just for social marketers and social workers. So everyone can just set up an account, just pitch your own idea, submit your idea in text, in video, in pictures, any formats. And then you can just share on your social medias, Just disseminate through your own channels, and people can come in, people can just judge your idea how good they are, and people can just donate money to make sure your idea can be executed. So very popular website in China, and there are actually a few other platforms doing the similar thing as well. Just for this platform, in the last 4 years, they actually got 4 million users, and they have already executed more than 1,500 social marketing campaigns. But if you ask me what they are, I don't know. How they are working, I don't know. And how many has been funded by who, and how ideas executed, and what kind of social impacts they created. There's nothing there. Not in website, probably just the creator who knows. I think it's important that we need to make sure all these good initiatives has been documented too. So that's pretty much the traits I summarized. I think for social marketers, this is just again, I think I'm trying to separate practitioner and academic here, but I think we are all academic in a sense, because we always do both. And this is all the things we can do as social marketers. And if you want to function better in China, I think really important is we need to know how the government functions, and they make decisions based on evidence as well. And they are actually smart people, practical people who want to make things happen, but they just have to be informed by our expertise and probably by our existence. So we know how they function, we know how they make decisions, and we can come in at the right place to make sure things can be achieved in our way too. And of course, in China, I think middle or upstream social marketing approaches will stay a long way in the foreseeable future. Will definitely work much better than the community level downstream level approach. And of course, we just have to be understanding a little bit more about the Chinese consumers, Chinese users, and how quickly we can adapt, how flexible we can be in terms of all the values. So we just have to be very mindful about understanding what it needs and what it wants. And of course, the last one is we have to make sure we evaluate and we document and we share with the world, either in Chinese or English, but at least we have to make our voice louder. And for academics, I think the most important one definitely is just start talking, start teaching, and start making buzz in the community, and maybe just work with other people, setting up associations to network, to at least know the existence of each other. And of course, if we can write a social marketing textbook in Chinese, I think that would be really, really helpful. I think that's what I'm going to present. I'm going to conclude with actually 2 pictures. This one is actually taken in 1981. It's actually 40 years ago. And you can see this is a big banner here in the middle. And that's how we do marketing back in the old days. And this slogan is trying to convince people to not have the second child. Okay, and this is actually the picture taken last week. I think last week, yes. And it probably you can see this is Shanghai, the largest city in China, and there's a QR code in the sky. That's not something I photoshopped. It's actually a real QR code formed by 1,500 drones. And it's a typical marketing stunt happening in China right now. And that's apparently how they are doing marketing now. And every time I saw these 2 pictures, I can think about how far we have go as marketers, and as social marketers, there's still so much things we can learn and we can implement. So I think I can stop here. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I really want to start contributing a little bit more as a Chinese into this international community and this association as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bo. That was a really excellent presentation and a review of some of the factors that impact on social marketing and some of the approaches that have been undertaken so far. So we've got about 10 minutes maximum for questions. We've got a few in already. So there's the first one from Carlos Santos, one of our board members. And he says, "Dear Po, as you can imagine, our main concern in social marketing is around democratic and human rights traditions in China, and how can we maintain those traditions of democracy and human rights when we're developing interventions, social marketing interventions in China?" So what's your view on that?
I think that's a really good question. I think it's a hard question to me too, because every time I discuss people with how Chinese handles human rights, and we always have we will inevitably go to more political than we need to be. But what I see here is that you can do anything you want, and there's a lot of freedom in China, and there's definitely, if you're doing things that's good for the society, good for the people, I won't expect too much intervention from the government, and even from from the place you are not expecting. I think that's what I'm seeing here is it's really about what you can do, what you cannot do. And I don't see that much difference compared to China and other countries in this sense.
Okay, okay. We have another question. Can you shed some light on how the issues of superstition was addressed?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very, this is getting, so the superstition is still playing a big role in our society. Like people go to temples, they're trying, but I don't think that's a big thing. That's a big issue because it's just a basic religion thing. But when you go to extreme, that becomes a superstition. There's a very common thing happening in China a couple of years ago. Is the old people, they for some unknown reason, they start to believe they have to throw cones into the airplane's engine, so the airplane will fly safely and land safely. So it happens a lot. Like you saw in the news, the old lady is like 80 years old, and when they are boarding, they just grab a handful of cones, throw that into the airplane engine, and the whole thing has to shut down. The engineer has to come in and check carefully to make sure it's safe. And I think that's kind of the superstition is creating the troubles. Fortunately, it's not that common. And it's and I saw news talking about people talking about solutions, using social marketing solutions to fix that. What they're saying is we can use superstition to fight superstition. We can just hire a monk or something and come to tell the old lady throwing the cones will just give you bad luck, and that will fix the problem because that's what the lady believes in. Personally, I don't think that's a good solution. Education and maybe proper intervention will be the good way. But again, this is just another aspect of our life, a uniqueness of Chinese culture.
Yeah, sure. Although sometimes it's actually, you can use people's value system, and reflect that back in an alternative behavior. So yeah, it's an interesting example with throwing stuff into the engine of a jet. I don't think I'd be very happy with that. We have another question. Are young people, you mentioned differences in generations, are young people as respectful of hierarchies in China as older people, and how might that impact on social marketing interventions?
I think young people tend to be more rebel, and that's why that's why I was talking about this new national pride, this like come back to the traditional values thing. So the generation, I would say the generation, I think the people born in 90s, early 2000, I don't know what's called, millennials, Generation Z. But anyway, this group of people, they tend to be a little bit more rebellion. But then when they grow older, they will tend to be, being a little bit mature, being to know what to listen to, what to not listen to. But the younger people, I think it's my observation, people tend to be a little bit more mature than they used to be, right? So still young people, and I think this is a good time because they get so many other informations. They are more diversified, they're more open to different ideas, and they tend to be less radical, I would say. So they can tell what's wrong and what's right. And in that sense, I think they know what's right to do. And in terms of social marketing, that would be a good thing.
Okay. We have another question in from Carlos, and we probably can do just two more questions. Carlos is saying that we have a project to create social marketing communications tools, websites, documents, links, and courses in Chinese? Is that something you feel needs to be developed?
I think
guess
that's a
from what
great
you said
idea.
earlier, probably,
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I think language barrier is still the big thing in China. Like if they're not looking for the information they don't understand, there's no way we can communicate to them. So
So
adapted language would be a great idea. Yes.
So a priority, and we must get you involved in developing and delivering those, Pang. So
Definitely happy to.
great. Last question. How do you think, you know, in a bigger focus on environmental issues as being a key global social problem could be addressed using social marketing in China?
I think that's a really good question. I think, okay. I think everything is evolving. You know, things are happening so fast. The things you believe, you know, that even the facts, it can be so 2020 or suddenly, and people just have to move on. I don't think it's gonna be a right answer, like a only answer to all these questions. To be honest, I don't have a very clear idea about how this look like in the future, but I think it's just we just have to keep an open mind and see how they're going. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at that point, we're just about out of time now. So just want to say once again, Bo, thanks so much for your presentation. Really insightful, extremely helpful. And just to kind of close out the webinar on AGM, wanted to say a big thanks to Patrick Cook, our past president, who's now stepping down. A big thanks to all the board of the International Social Marketing Association. Also, big thanks to all the associations that are affiliated with us. We really look forward to working with you going forward. And finally, to say, if you're not a member of one of the affiliated associations, please do join. And we look forward to working with you going forward. Thanks so much. That's the end of the webinar. Thanks for joining us.